This video was brought to you by NCIX. Great technology, selection, and service.
Showtime! What's up guys, I'm Dimitri with Hardware Canucks, and I think we can all agree that the phablet as a category is quite risky as it combines the form factor of a tablet with functionality of a smartphone. And if any of those core elements of those two devices, if any of those core elements are not done properly, then what is the point?
The Acer S1 is almost a year old, that has just been released in Canada. It is unlocked and goes for a whopping $379 off contract. And right away you can think of many smartphones within this price range that offer better specs, better screens like the Nexus 5.
So let's see whether or not the S1 is just way too late into the game with its outdated specs, low performance, and realistically really low res display for 2014. Whoa.
It's rocking a MediaTek quad-core ARM chip at 1.5 GHz with only 1 GB of RAM, 8 GB of storage, and running mostly stock Android Jelly Bean 4.2. It features Bluetooth 4.0, accelerometer, G-sensor, cellular bands do not include LTE or 4G, there's no landscape mode on the front page, and the 5.7-inch screen is IPS, however with only 720p resolution that scales everything way too large for this size.
So there's obvious color shifting with the display, especially viewing anything vertical. The grays become yellow, which is unpleasant, specifically for email. And unless you're looking directly at the phone, your viewing angles and your viewing experience will suffer.
Now the phablet is large as expected, two-hand operation is needed. The physical characteristics are not impressive with just okay plastic housing. The embedded curve for the speaker that collected dust really quickly. The built-in capacitive buttons I actually like that somewhat resemble Android L design direction. The two aluminum strips running on each side adds a bit to the design, but both the power button on the left and the volume rocker on the right are completely horrendous, and I don't use that word often.
So they offer very little, if any, feedback. The power button is actually very loose in our sample. You can actually hear it rattling. And the same goes for the volume rocker. They don't provide any tactile response, and they squish in instead of actually clicking in. And also notice the power button and the volume rocker right across from each other, which means that accidental turning off the phone as you're trying to adjust the volume was very common, and vice versa.
The headphone jack is up top and the micro USB port at the bottom. The back cover is somewhat rubberized with curvy sides for better handling. You can see the protruding camera lens along with complementing flash. The camera is 8 megapixels and takes less than average pictures, but I do have to praise them for really quick autofocus and firing, something that I'm not used to on my Nexus 4.
We do have 1080p recording. As you can see, right now we're recording with image stabilization on, which is digital, so it does zoom in on the image slightly, but we do have all the controls for the exposure, so that's awesome to see, to really fine-tune how you want your image to look. And so this is the sample. It looks pretty good.
Behind the removable cover we find a 2400 mAh battery with a micro SD card slot and a SIM slot, and battery life with Wi-Fi and 3G connectivity served me well into 2 days, which is refreshing again as my Nexus 4 barely lasts a full day anymore.
So one very important element missing from the S1 is a notification indicator. You know that thing that blinks to indicate if you have an unread mail, missed a phone call, or you have some pending text messages. Well, the S1 doesn't have that. You have to physically turn on the device, and that's very unpleasant considering the power button is garbage. Now you do have third-party apps to, for this type of notification stuff, but the fact that this core feature is missing from the phone is disappointing. Now the rear-facing speaker isn't that great. It's right here, it's very tiny. Regardless of the DTS Studio Sound certification, it's not very good. I've missed a lot of phone calls while being outdoors simply because I cannot hear the sound on this phone. But maybe the vibration of the phone, you might detect that something is incoming, but that's not the case. The vibration is very weak, and I practically can't feel it when it's inside my pants. And also when it's on the surface, you can't actually hear it vibrating, which is a big mistake. And I'm actually getting a phone call right now, and I wouldn't have known unless we set this up. But this is a phone call from Eber, and as you can hear, it's actually not very loud. And being outside, being in a loud environment, you would have missed this important phone call from potentially a very important person too. Now, speaking of sound quality, call reception and call quality has been pretty good. However, the actual speakerphone here on top, from which you hear the other person on the other line, is very quiet, even at 100% volume. And you also have to position it in a very strange way in order to sort of get it inside your ear for you to hear what's incoming. And I think for Acer to mess up this very important element in a smartphone is very disappointing for this price bracket. So the S1 is mainly running stock Android 4.2 without any annoying Acer skin, which I'm really happy about. But let's be realistic, Android 4.2 is outdated, it's inefficient. We are already introducing Android L2 devices, so Acer really should check themselves and push these updates towards these smartphones that are only now launching in Canada.
Second, the Phablet experience is sluggish, and I don't mean clicking the icon tray button to see the stutter. I mean really laggy Google Hangouts where the animation takes forever to process when you send a message, or when turning on the phone and the clock widget needs to update to the latest time with a clearly visible lag, or when getting into any of the 4 apps from the shortcuts on the lock screen. This is just not on par to what we've come to expect for a smartphone in this price bracket.
And running a few benchmarks, and results really solidify poor Android performance as the hardware is well below average. So there's the benchmarks right there. We got the 3 phones, you know, because we set up the shot like this. That's just how it works.
For productivity, Acer includes a few float apps. Press and hold the multitask button to access a row that allows multi-window overlay, but due to such low resolution, it's almost impractical to have them open at the same time, and I found them completely useless. And the only float application I appreciate is incoming phone call that doesn't occupy the whole screen, so there's no interruption on what you're doing.
And after using the S1 for 3 weeks, I was very happy to switch back to my Nexus 4 as it features the same resolution. It's much more appropriate form factor for that resolution. It's much faster on all fronts, and it's also cheaper. So that was a no-brainer for me.
So the Acer Liquid S1 is well behind the times to be considered worthy. And while I can appreciate the expandable storage with a micro SD slot and mainly stock UI, I think it fails in many core categories for both as a smartphone and a tablet. First, the outdated version of Android, followed by the low-res display for this 5.7-inch form factor, poorly designed non-tactile buttons and uncomfortable placement of them, really weak rear-facing speaker and almost unnoticeable vibration, call volume is not loud enough, and in loud environments it's really difficult to hear the person on the other line. And finally, the performance is really poor and you constantly notice laggy animations. And for the price, it is really difficult to recommend the S1, but what do you think of the phablet category in general? The LG G3, for example, and the Note 3 seem to hit every element right with regards to user experience for this large form factor. Of course, they're twice the price of the S1, but still the S1 for the price is uncompetitive in today's market.
Alright guys, thanks for watching our review of the S1 phablet from Acer. Make sure you subscribe for more similar content, and we'll see you in the next one.